And here we have 3-0's Nemesis Prime himself standing straight up and down the lightbox, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. And I have to say, this guy, as simple as this pose is, he still looks like a total badass. Whatever it was, whatever magic recipe that 3-0 had been put into this guy right here, it paid off. It looks fantastic. I don't know if it's the glossy black, the excessive amount of detail in the paintwork and the sculpt, but it just meshes together to make one freaking awesome looking piece. He looked good in the classic red and blue Optimus Prime colors, but in this more evil variant, I actually might be swayed into thinking this one might be my favorite of the line so far. Now, of course, it's a little bit early to call that because Soundwave is coming in the next couple of days, and I am already partial to saying he might be my favorite because Soundwave was one of my all-time favorite characters in G1. But nevertheless, I digress. This guy in front of me right here looks fantastic. I'm so glad Hasbro allowed them to do this in terms of making a concept art version of Optimus that was never seen in the movie. For those of you who don't know, there will be a Sideshow exclusive Shattered Glass Optimus Prime in the purple and sort of dark bluish color scheme coming out hopefully in the near future. Also, a more G1 sort of colored version of Blitzwing has been announced as well. I will try my best to get my hands on both of those and review them on the channel. But what we're going to do now is take him off the rotating turntable, punch in, and take a closer look at the details. And here we have Nemesis Prime himself up close and personal, and I have to say, this guy is just riddled with badass detail and paint applications. They have gone to town. Something about the pistons and pulleys and gears and all of the detail on this guy just screams evil, and when you paint it black, it just shines. So too does the actual paint application itself. It's nicely done. There's a depth to it. It kind of looks like there's a bit of a metallic flake. You can see it getting picked up with the light. You can also see that around all the edging, it is done in a nice silver paint. So it does look like a proper metal piece. Don't get me wrong, there's a hell of a lot of die cast in this piece right here. I will weigh it in just a second to give you an idea of how heavy it is, but I do feel like most of the metal is in the legs. There is still a little bit in the arms, but still, you wouldn't be able to tell which is metal and which isn't because of the paintwork. It looks that darn good. There's not just sort of scuffage around the entire thing, there's also weathering and also oil. They've gone in with this oil wash throughout all of the little cracks and crevices. You can see especially on the flaps back here, they are nicely done. It's got this mottled sort of effect, like worn out oil-soaked metal, and I love the way it looks. It gives it even more of a nasty and gnarly feel. Now, taking a look at the head itself under the lights, you can see some nice red lenses. Unfortunately, 3-0 doesn't provide batteries out of the box there. You will have to supply your own, and I'm pretty sure they are AG13. I didn't have any on hand, unfortunately, but still, you can see the nice red lenses in there, and you can also see that the chest windows are nice and red as well. So they haven't changed a hell of a lot in terms of the way pieces are constructed. It's pretty much exactly the same, but as you can see, the paintwork is drastically different. You do have Decepticon symbols up here, you do have the red lenses on the windows themselves, and of course, a subtle pop of teal, just like we'd expect from Nemesis Prime. Honestly, I wish there was more of it. It's only in these two sections right here, but it's still really good to see it. It's classic, and I love it. Now, the other interesting thing is the silver. It's slightly different between all of the pieces. The smokestacks are a nice bright sort of chrome-ish silver with some nice weathering up the top there, and these bands across the shoulders are slightly different yet again with some nice black texturing. Then moving down to the thighs, they're different yet again. It's silver but with a bit of a gold wash over the top and then that oil stained effect. So I like that they've used a bunch of different colors. You can tell that the paint process on this guy was very, very extensive and also expensive. They've spared no expense in getting this guy to look as good as he possibly can. Now, moving down to the shins themselves, they are again nicely painted in black. Would I have liked them to be a bit of a different contrast in color, just like regular Prime? Yes, I honestly would have. Maybe a gunmetal would have looked really nice and given a nice pop of contrast, but I'm not going to complain. These look great too. There's silver etching throughout the entire thing to give it that worn look, and as I said, most of the die cast is down here in the legs themselves. It's hefty, it's chunky, and I love it. Now, the wheels themselves are done in a slightly squishy rubber. They aren't super squishy, but they are a rubber piece. They're not just a solid plastic, and you can tell by the way they look. You can also see some nice weathering, some mud in the tracks. They don't rotate as far as I can tell. It looks like they might. So yes, they can rotate. I've literally just discovered that on camera with all of you watching at home. So yes, they can rotate, but no, this guy, I know it's a little bit late in the video to tell you, spoiler alert, he cannot transform. But just like my Superman figure, who indeed cannot fly, I don't actually need that gimmick to make me actually appreciate the love, attention to detail, and craftsmanship that has gone into this piece right here. I'm perfectly happy with a static, but fully, of course, articulated version of Optimus Prime, just in his robot mode. That works perfectly fine for me. Now, for those of you out there who are wondering how heavy this guy is, because of course he does actually contain some die-cast metal, here we have the scales, and he actually weighs in at 917 grams. That's quite close to 1 kilo. This guy is a hefty boy. I'm very impressed with how heavy he is. In hand, you can feel all of the die-cast elements. I wouldn't be surprised if the entire leg on both sides was completely comprised of die-cast. This thing is heavy, and I love it. Just going over articulation on Nemesis Prime himself. Now, bear in mind, this is my personal copy of the figure, so I'm going to be potentially a little bit more careful with some of the joints than you have to when you get yours in hand. Now, starting off with the head sculpt itself, it is on multiple different joints, as you can see right there. It does also have a nice filler piece there, so when you do move it around, there's not a huge gap throughout the entire neck section. I really do like the way that's engineered. Now, the arms themselves do go out a really decent range, pretty much a full 90 degrees there, but as you can see, all of this stuff does have to move out of the way to prevent it from colliding with the arm itself. There is a bunch of stuff that can move on this guy. I probably won't do justice to all of the moving pieces, and for that I do apologize. I'll just have to show you the regular range of motion. Now, the arms do go forward all the way around. You can, of course, swivel it all the way around entirely. You do also have a very decent double bend at the elbow, with multiple little gear pieces on the inside that do move. You also, of course, have a swivel at the upper bicep. Now, the rest is on multiple different joints. There's a ball joint, but it's also on a swivel, so you can get it going forward and back, and also a little bit side to side. So you will have to work with it. It's rather stiff, but you can definitely get some neat posing out of the wrists themselves. The way they've done the torso is a really nice feat of engineering. It can swivel, it can also pivot from side to side. You will see pieces falling off every now and then, but they can clip back on fairly decently. I'd rather something fall off than break entirely, so that, in my opinion, is a plus. But you do have swivel and some pivot, but the cool thing is it can actually ratchet forward pretty much all the way. Look at that crunch, that's insane. And so too is this detail on the back there that's only revealed when it's crunched forward. They could have left that as a huge gaping hole in the back there, but they didn't, and that's absolutely fantastic. Now, down here at the lower part of the waist, you do also have another swivel. Now, the legs themselves do move forward pretty much the full way, but these pieces can move out of the way so the legs can go even higher. Same thing with going out. These things do move outwards, and then the legs can as well. You do have a slight bit of swivel up there, a really nice double bend at the knee that goes the entire way, and of course, right down here at the feet, you do have pivot, which is really nice and forgiving, and of course, you do have a little bit of forward and back. It is really hard to move stuff around, especially down here at the toes. They are really, really stiff, but don't worry, you can do it, and you can get him into some badass poses. Just wrapping up on the 3-0 Deluxe Scale Nemesis Prime. Now, this guy sits in a bit of a weird spot in the fact that he wasn't actually in the movie, but with that being said, he's based off one of, if not the very best, on-screen representations of Optimus Prime in terms of a classic G1 look. So it's already got that going for it. You paint it black, you give it some Decepticon symbols, give it a little bit of red and a little bit of teal, and in my opinion, you're on to a winner. Now, I don't think a hell of a lot of people actually picked this guy up, which is a darn shame. He looks fantastic. And now, because unfortunately Travis Knight wasn't able to use Megatron as the leader of the Decepticons in the movie, because of course it was tied into the Bayverse, Megatron was frozen in Alaska or wherever he was, this guy is now going to be, at least for me, the leader of the Decepticons on the shelf. We've got Blitzwing, we've got Soundwave, and fingers crossed we are getting more Decepticons very soon. I honestly would love to see a Shockwave, fingers crossed for that. So that's kind of my reasoning for going ahead and picking this guy up. I know it's kind of a weird excuse, but honestly, I don't really have one big overarching reason. He just looks that darn good. I love the Optimus Prime, I love the engineering that goes into these pieces. 3-0 has killed it, and I absolutely had to pick him up. Now, unfortunately, he is sold out worldwide. It was a 1,500 production run, and this guy I do think was in the last 300. Those were the only ones that were available. Who knows if they're going to make a few more available in the coming months. Stay tuned, I guess, to the 3-0 socials and their website. But if you do have the opportunity to pick this guy up, either from 3-0 directly, or maybe even on eBay, I would strongly suggest doing it, because this guy is absolutely fantastic.